Before he became Jeremy Brown, the mild-mannered English teacher beloved by millions, Barry Evans had known nothing but hardship from the very beginning. Orphaned as an infant during the Second World War, he grew up in institutions where survival meant resilience. Yet, when his body was discovered in a modest bungalow in Leicestershire in 1997, the circumstances surrounding his passing remained shrouded in mystery, a puzzle that has never been solved. Barry Joseph Evans was born on the 18th of June, 1943, in Guildford, Surrey. He never knew his parents. The war had left countless children orphaned, and Barry became one of them. He was raised in the Shaftesbury Homes orphanage boarding schools, first at Fortescue House School in Twickenham, then at Bisley Boys' School in Surrey. Life was institutional, regimented, and often lonely, yet young Barry found solace in one place, the school stage. Teachers noticed his natural ability. He could command attention, deliver lines with conviction, and make audiences believe. It was this gift that would eventually rescue him from obscurity. At 18, Barry secured a John Gielgud Scholarship to study at the Central School of Speech and Drama, a remarkable achievement for a boy from the orphanage system. He threw himself into his training with determination. By the mid-1960s, he was performing at the National Theatre at the Old Vic, taking small but important roles in productions of Shakespeare and modern drama. His talent was undeniable, his future bright. In 1968, director Clive Donner cast Barry in the lead role of Here We Go, Round the Mulberry Bush, a coming-of-age comedy about a teenager struggling with romance and identity. Photoplay magazine called him a bright and exciting new actor. The Sunday Telegraph described his screen debut as brilliant. Barry Evans, the orphan from Twickenham, had become a film star. The role brought offers flooding in, television beckoned, and Barry answered with Doctor in the House, playing the earnest medical student Michael Upton alongside a talented ensemble cast. The series became a hit, running from 1969 to 1971. Audiences adored his boyish charm and gentle humor. Then came Mind Your Language, the sitcom that would define his career. Premiering in 1977, it followed a night school English teacher attempting to educate a multicultural classroom of foreign students. Barry played Jeremy Brown with warmth and patience, creating a character that resonated across generations. The show ran until 1979, returning briefly in 1986. It remains beloved to this day, syndicated worldwide, its humor bridging cultures and decades. But success proved fleeting. By the early 1980s, Barry's youthful appearance, once his greatest asset, began working against him. Casting directors struggled to see him in age-appropriate roles. Work dried up. The phone stopped ringing. He took smaller parts, theater roles that paid little. There were periods when he claimed unemployment benefits. The boy who had risen so far found himself struggling once more. In 1993, Barry left London for Claybrook Magna, a quiet village near Lutterworth in Leicestershire. He became a taxi driver, ferrying passengers around the Midlands, a former television star now working the night shift. Colleagues recall a kind man, one who never complained about the hand fate had dealt him. Yet there were signs that life was difficult. He was lonely. He drank. He kept to himself. On the 10th of February, 1997, police arrived at Barry's home to inform him they had recovered his stolen car, reported missing the previous day. When he did not answer the door, they entered. They found him in the living room, 53 years old, deceased. The coroner discovered a blow to his head and high levels of alcohol in his system. A short will lay on a table nearby. 3 local youths were arrested after being found in possession of his stolen vehicle, but no charges were ever brought. The cause of death was never confirmed. An open verdict was returned. Barry Evans was cremated at Golders Green Crematorium. A blue plaque now marks the house where he once lived in Belsize Park, northwest London. Mind Your Language continues to find new audiences on streaming platforms. His performance as the patient, exasperated teacher, still bringing joy, yet the mystery of his final hours remains. For a man who brought laughter to so many, his ending was shrouded in darkness, a question mark that will never be answered. Before she became the formidable matron of the Carry On films, before her voice became one of the most recognizable in British comedy, Josephine Edwina Jacks was a young girl who dreamed of dance and theatre. Born on the 7th of February, 1922, in Sandgate, Kent, she would grow into a performer of extraordinary versatility. Yet her life would be marked by private turmoil and ultimately cut short by the very weight she carried, both physical and emotional. Her father, Robin Rochester Jacques, served in the British Army and later the Royal Air Force. Her mother, Mary Jacques, worked as a nurse in the Voluntary Aid Detachment during the Great War. The family was steeped in service, duty, and resilience. Young Hattie inherited her mother's love of theatre and was taken to see live shows from an early age. She was enchanted. Tragically, her father perished in a flying accident on the 8th of August, 1923, when Hattie was barely a year old. After his death, the family moved to London, where Mary raised her children alone. Hattie trained as a hairdresser, but theatre called to her with irresistible force. During the Second World War, she served as a nurse with the Voluntary Aid Detachment and later worked as a welder, contributing to the war effort whilst dreaming of the stage. In 1944, she made her professional debut at the Players Theatre in London, appearing in the revue Late Joys. It was here that she acquired the nickname that would stay with her forever. During a performance in the minstrel show Coal Black Mammies for Dixie, a backstage member compared her appearance to the American actress Hattie McDaniel, known for Gone with the Wind. The name stayed, and Josephine became Hattie for the rest of her life. Her voice, rich, bell-toned, and carrying a faint note of melancholy, brought her to national prominence on radio. She performed with Tommy Handley on It's That Man Again, with ventriloquist Peter Brew on Educating Archie, and alongside Tony Hancock on Hancock's Half Hour. Radio made her a household name, but it was film that turned her into a legend. In 1958, Hattie appeared in her first Carry On film, Carry On Sergeant. She would go on to star in 14 Carry On pictures, most memorably as the no-nonsense hospital matron in Carry On Nurse and Carry On Doctor. Her portrayal of matron became so iconic that even today, the image of the stern yet compassionate ward sister is inseparable from Hattie Jacques. She could be fierce and funny, commanding and kind, all at once. In 1949, Hattie married actor John Lemija, best known as Sergeant Wilson in Dad's Army. They had 2 sons, Robin and Kim. For years, they appeared the perfect couple. Yet behind closed doors, the marriage was troubled. In the early 1960s, Hattie began a 5-year affair with another man, a relationship that devastated John. They divorced in 1965, a separation that left Hattie emotionally and physically exhausted. She had struggled with her weight since adolescence, but after the divorce, it rose dramatically. By the late 1970s, she weighed nearly 20 stone. Hattie's professional life continued alongside Eric Sykes, her longtime collaborator. Their television series, Sykes and A, ran from 1960 to 1965, and then again in the 1970s, showcasing her remarkable comic talent. Yet their relationship was not always smooth. During a theatre production in the late 1970s, Sykes became difficult, accusing Hattie of receiving special treatment when she was given a dressing room without stairs. She was suffering from arthritis and ulcerated legs that required daily bandaging. The pain was constant. Still, she pressed on, unwilling to allow illness to halt her work. By May 1980, her doctor warned her not to travel to Greece for a holiday, so she went to Ireland instead. On the ferry home, she told a friend, "You know, I am not going to live long." Insurance companies refused to cover her for film work. By October, her weight had increased again, and she struggled to breathe. Admitted to Charing Cross Hospital, she later returned home to Eardley Crescent in Kensington for a weekend break. On the 6th of October, 1980, Hattie passed away in her sleep from a heart attack, aged 58. She also suffered from kidney failure. Her funeral took place at Putney Vale Crematorium, where her ashes were scattered. Her sons refused Eric Sykes' entry to the service, still hurt by how he had treated their mother. Kenneth Williams, a close friend and fellow Carry On star, was devastated. Her former husband called her a remarkable lady with an aura of love and kindness. In November 1995, a blue plaque was placed at her former home in Earl's Court. Hattie remains a beloved figure in British comedy. remembered for her larger-than-life performances and her generous spirit. Her matron will forever patrol the wards of Britain's collective memory. Before he was King Arthur riding through mist-shrouded forests, before he was Brian Cohen standing bewildered on a cross, Graham Chapman was a young boy in Leicester watching the aftermath of tragedy. One of his earliest memories was seeing the remains of Polish airmen after a plane crash near his home. That image of death and chaos would stay with him, a dark thread running through a life dedicated to making people laugh. Graham Arthur Chapman was born on the 8th of January, 1941, at the Stonygate nursing home in Leicester. His father, Walter, was a police constable who would rise to the rank of chief inspector. His mother, Edith Towers, raised Graham and his elder brother John in what both boys later described as an extremely poor upbringing. Money was scarce, but imagination was not. Graham attended Melton Mowbray Grammar School, where he discovered a love for science, acting, and comedy, three passions that would shape his future. At Cambridge University, Graham studied medicine at Emmanuel College, training to become a doctor at St Bartholomew's Hospital Medical College. Yet it was not anatomy or surgery that captured his heart, it was the Footlights Dramatic Club. There, he met John Cleese, a fellow student with a towering frame and an even greater talent for comedy. Together, they formed a writing partnership that would change British humour forever. Their review, A Clump of Plinths, was so successful at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival that it was renamed Cambridge Circus and toured internationally. Graham qualified as a medical doctor in 1966, but he never practiced medicine. Comedy called to him with a voice he could not ignore. He and Cleese began writing for television, contributing to The Frost Report and other shows. Then, in 1969, they joined forces with Michael Palin, Terry Jones, Eric Idle, and Terry Gilliam to create Monty Python's Flying Circus. The show revolutionized comedy. Absurd, anarchic, and brilliant, it startled viewers with sketches that defied logic and embraced chaos. Graham co-wrote many of the troupe's most famous pieces, including the Dead Parrot sketch. It was his idea to change the defective item from a toaster to a parrot, a suggestion that transformed the sketch into legend. Graham excelled at playing straight men surrounded by madness. He was the Colonel, stepping in to stop sketches that had gone too far. He was King Arthur in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, maintaining regal dignity whilst knights discussed swallows and coconuts. He was Brian Cohen in Life of Brian, an ordinary man mistaken for the Messiah. His performances were understated yet powerful, the calm center of the storm. But Graham's personal life was turbulent. He was an alcoholic from his Cambridge days, drinking heavily throughout the 1970s. His fellow Pythons recall him arriving late to rehearsals, forgetting lines, suffering from delirium tremens. During the filming of Holy Grail, he was so unwell that he could barely function. Concerned about his ability to perform in Life of Brian, he quit drinking during Christmas 1977. He remained sober for the rest of his life, a victory won through sheer will. Graham was also openly gay, a courageous stance in an era when homosexuality was still stigmatized. He met his long-term partner, David Sherlock, in Ibiza in 1966, and they remained together for over 2 decades. Graham became a vocal advocate for gay rights, speaking on campuses and appearing on television to challenge prejudice. He also embraced the dangerous sports club, participating in risky stunts that alarmed his friends. He was a man of contradictions, serious and silly, disciplined and reckless. In 1988, during a routine dental visit, a small tumor was discovered on one of Graham's tonsils. It was malignant. Both tonsils were removed, but the following year, doctors found that the cancer had spread to his spinal column. Another tumor was removed, but the disease was relentless. By July 1989, the cancer was declared terminal. Graham underwent chemotherapy and surgery, but the battle was lost. In September, confined to a wheelchair, he appeared for the final time with his fellow Pythons in a 20th anniversary television special. It was his last public performance. On the 1st of October, 1989, Graham suffered a massive stroke, which turned into a hemorrhage. He died on the 4th of October at Maidstone Hospital, aged 48. At his bedside were David Sherlock, his brother John, and fellow Pythons Michael Palin and John Cleese. Palin was alone with him when he passed. holding his hand and telling him he was loved. 2 months later, a memorial service was held at St. Bartholomew's Hospital. In typical Python fashion, Cleese delivered a eulogy filled with profanity and affection, calling Graham a freeloading bastard and insisting he would never have forgiven them for a somber tribute. The service ended with the Pythons singing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life." Graham Chapman had left the stage, but his laughter echoed on. Before he became Private Walker, the charming Cockney spiv of Warmington-on-Sea, James Beck knew what it meant to struggle. Born into poverty in North London on the 21st of February 1929, he grew up in a household where his father was frequently unemployed and his mother made artificial flowers to bring in a few shillings. Yet from that hardship came a determination to create something better, to find meaning and joy through performance. When his life ended suddenly at the age of 44, the nation mourned the loss of a man who had made them laugh through some of their darkest days. Stanley James Carroll Beck, known to friends as Jimmy, was the product of working-class London. He attended Popham Road Primary School, where teachers noticed his quick wit and expressive face. After finishing school, he studied at St. Martin's School of Art, dreaming of a career in design. But the call of national service came, and James joined the British Army, serving as a physical training instructor. It was a role that demanded discipline and energy, qualities he carried with him for the rest of his life. After demobilization, James returned to civilian life uncertain of his future. One day, whilst riding a bus, he saw a man reading a script. On a whim, he mentioned that he would like to be an actor. The man, amused by his boldness, offered him a job as an assistant stage manager at a small theatre company in Ramsgate, at £3 a week. It was hardly a fortune, but it was a start. James threw himself into theatre, performing in everything from Shakespeare to pantomime. His early roles included Shylock in The Merchant of Venice in 1963, a performance that earned positive reviews and proved he could handle dramatic material. Moving to London, James decided to focus on television. He appeared in popular series like Coronation Street, Doctor in the House, and Fabian of the Yard. Each role was a stepping stone, building his reputation as a reliable and versatile performer. Then, in 1968, came the opportunity that would change everything. The British Broadcasting Corporation launched Dad's Army, a sitcom about the Home Guard during the Second World War. Co-writer Jimmy Perry had originally hoped to play the role of Private Walker himself, but was persuaded to focus on writing. James Beck auditioned and won the part. Private Joe Walker was a black market trader, a spiv who could get you anything for a price: nylons, whiskey, rationed goods. He was charming, roguish, and utterly lovable. James played him with a twinkle in his eye and a skip in his step, creating one of the show's most popular characters. Dad's Army became a national treasure, its gentle humor and warm portrayal of ordinary people striking a chord with audiences. James appeared in 5 series, becoming a household name. His co-stars adored him. Arthur Lowe, Clive Dunn, all praised his professionalism and kindness. By 1973, James had recorded 5 series of Dad's Army and was nearing the completion of the 6th. He also worked on the radio version of the show and took on other projects, including the lead role in the sitcom Romany Jones, playing Bert Jones, a layabout living on a caravan site. His career was flourishing. He was in demand, respected, and beloved. There seemed no reason to believe it would end so soon. On the afternoon of the 14th of July, 1973, James attended a summer fete in aid of guide dogs for the blind as a special guest. During the opening ceremony, he suddenly felt unwell. He returned home, and within an hour, he was rushed to Queen Mary's Hospital in Roehampton, suffering from acute pancreatitis. For 3 weeks, doctors fought to save him, but the illness was too severe. Complicated by heart failure and kidney failure, his body could not recover. On the 6th of August, 1973, James Beck passed away, aged 44. His wife, Kay, and his 3 children were left devastated. The cast of Dad's Army was shattered. The last time they had seen him was on Friday the 13th of July, when they recorded 2 radio episodes at the Playhouse Theatre in London. Ronnie Barker, who had worked with him on other projects, was so upset he could not work for several days. Writers Jimmy Perry and David Croft were heartbroken, having lost not just a colleague, but a friend. They attempted to recast Private Walker, but no one could fill James's shoes. The character was quietly written out, mentioned only once more in the series finale as having gone up the smoke to London on business. James Beck was cremated at Putney Vale Cemetery, where a tree was planted in his memory. His legacy lives on through Dad's Army, which continues to be shown on television and celebrated as one of Britain's finest sitcoms. His portrayal of Private Walker remains a masterclass in comic timing and charm. For a man who came from so little, James Beck gave the world so much. His laughter, his warmth, his humanity, these are the gifts that endure. Before he was Quint, the grizzled shark hunter of Jaws, before he was Doyle Lonergan in The Sting, Robert Shaw was a boy from Lancashire who grew up in the shadow of tragedy. His father, a physician, suffered from depression and alcoholism, and when Robert was 12, his father's life came to a tragic end. That loss left scars that never fully healed. Robert would go on to become one of Britain's finest actors, yet he carried his father's demons with him. On the 28th of August, 1978, whilst driving through the Irish countryside, those demons finally caught up with him. Robert Archibald Shaw was born on the 9th of August, 1927, in West Thornton, Lancashire. His father, Thomas, was a doctor, and his mother, Doreen, a former nurse. When Robert was 7, the family moved to Scotland. But the move did not ease his father's struggles. Thomas Shaw was a manic depressive and a heavy drinker, and in 1939, he ended his own life. Young Robert was left to make sense of the incomprehensible, and that grief shaped him profoundly. After the Second World War, Robert joined the Shakespeare Memorial Theatre at Stratford-upon-Avon, performing in productions of Macbeth, Cymbeline, and Henry VIII. With the Old Vic Company, he continued primarily in Shakespearean roles, honing his craft on the stages of Britain's most prestigious theatres. In 1959, he starred in a West End production of The Long and the Short and the Tall, a performance that brought him to the attention of film producers. Robert's first notable film appearance was as the villain in the James Bond picture From Russia with Love in 1963. He played Donald Grant, a Spectre assassin, and though the role was relatively small, his menace was unforgettable. More substantial roles followed, including The Caretaker, the screen adaptation of Harold Pinter's play, and The Luck of Ginger Coffee, in which he portrayed an Irish immigrant struggling in Canada. Critics praised his intelligence and intensity. In 1966, Robert earned an Academy Award nomination for his portrayal of King Henry VIII in A Man for All Seasons. It was a towering performance, capturing the monarch's charm, cruelty, and complexity. Robert was also a novelist and playwright, and his book The Man in the Glass Booth, published in 1966, was later adapted into a successful Broadway play and film. He was a true Renaissance man, as comfortable with a pen as with a script. The 1970s brought Robert his greatest fame. He played Doyle Lonergan, the Mark in The Sting, and the ringleader of hijackers in The Taking of Pelham 123. But it was his role as Quint in Jaws that made him a legend. Director Steven Spielberg cast him as the crusty old sailor obsessed with hunting the great white shark terrorizing a New England town. Robert's performance was magnetic. His monologue about the sinking of the USS Indianapolis remains one of the most chilling scenes in cinema history. The film became the highest-grossing picture of its time, and Robert Shaw became a household name. Yet, behind the success, Robert was drinking himself to death. He had been an alcoholic for most of his adult life, consuming up to 3 or 4 bottles of hard liquor a day at the height of his addiction. He smoked 60 to 100 cigarettes daily, his voice growing rougher with each passing year. Friends and colleagues watched with alarm as his health deteriorated. During the filming of The Klansman in 1974, he nearly died from alcohol poisoning and was admitted to a hospital in California. He dried out temporarily, but the pull of the bottle was too strong. In 1978, Robert appeared in Avalanche Express, playing a Russian general who defects to the West. It would be his final film. He was in poor health during filming, suffering from the effects of years of abuse. On the 28th of August, 1978, Robert was driving from Castlebar, County Mayo, to his home in Tormakeady, Ireland, with his wife Virginia and their young son Thomas. They had spent the day playing golf and shopping. Suddenly, Robert felt unwell. He stopped the car, stepped out, and collapsed on the roadside. He was taken to Castlebar General Hospital, where he later passed away following severe medical complications related to long-term health deterioration. He was 51 years old. Robert's body was cremated, and his ashes were scattered near his home in Tragically. In 2008, a memorial stone was unveiled at the spot where he died, bearing the Irish inscription, "May his soul be on the right-hand side of God." His widow, Virginia, attended the unveiling, saying, "He was a wonderful person. He was fun, generous, naughty, drank too much, and loved his children." Tragically gave him real life. Robert Shaw's legacy endures through his films, his books, and the memories of those who knew him. He was a man of immense talent and equal torment, a star who burned brilliantly but all too briefly. Before he was Lenny Godber, the naive young prisoner with a heart of gold, Richard Beckinsale was a boy from Nottingham with dreams as big as his talent. Born on the 6th of July, 1947, in Carlton, Nottinghamshire, he came from a working-class family and left school at 15 with ambitions to become an actor. By the time he was 30, he had achieved more than most actors manage in a lifetime. Then, on the morning of the 19th of March, 1979, he simply did not wake up. Britain lost one of its most beloved performers, and a question hung in the air: how could someone so young, so vibrant, so full of promise, be gone? Richard's father, Arthur John Beckinsale, was of Anglo-Burmese descent, and his mother, Margaret Barlow, was English. They raised Richard and his siblings in a modest home where education and ambition were valued. Young Richard attended Alderman White Secondary Modern School, where he discovered his love of acting. He performed in school plays, taking the lead in Tobias and the Angel, and earning praise in the local newspaper. Encouraged by his teachers, he enrolled at Clarendon College of Further Education before winning a scholarship to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. It was a triumph for a boy from his background, proof that talent could open doors. Graduating in 1968, Richard began his professional career in repertory theatre, touring the United Kingdom in productions of The Wizard of Oz, Twelfth Night, and Hamlet. He made his television debut in 1969, playing a police officer in a single episode of Coronation Street. It was a small role, but it led to bigger things. In 1970, he was cast as Geoffrey Scrimshaw in the sitcom The Lovers, opposite Paula Wilcox. The show was a success, and Richard's performance won him attention. Producers recognized his natural warmth and comic timing. Then came the roles that would define his career. In 1974, Richard was cast as Alan Moore, a medical student, in the ITV sitcom Rising Damp. At the same time, he was playing Lenny Godber, a young inmate, in the British Broadcasting Corporation's Porridge, alongside Ronnie Barker. It was unprecedented for an actor to star in two of Britain's most popular sitcoms simultaneously, but Richard managed it with grace. Rising Damp showcased his ability to play earnestness and vulnerability, whilst Porridge revealed his gift for comedy and pathos. Lenny Godber was innocent, optimistic, and endearing, a character audiences took to their hearts. Porridge ended in 1977 when Lenny was released from prison in the final episode. Richard then starred in Going Straight, a spin-off that followed Lenny and Fletcher as they attempted to rebuild their lives on the outside. The show won critical acclaim, and Richard's performance was celebrated. In 1978, shortly after his 30th birthday, he was surprised by Eamon Andrews with the famous Red Book for an appearance on This Is Your Life. Colleagues and friends paid tribute, praising his kindness and talent. In early 1979, Richard was filming the British Broadcasting Corporation sitcom Bloomers, in which he played Stan, an out-of-work actor who takes a job at a flower shop. He had also just completed work on the film version of Porridge, which would be released later that year. Everything seemed to be going well, yet Richard had been feeling unwell. In December 1978, during the filming of Bloomers, he suffered dizzy spells and blackouts. Concerned, he sought medical advice. His doctor reassured him that he had only an overactive stomach lining and slightly high cholesterol. The symptoms persisted, but Richard attributed them to nerves. In mid-March, he complained to his wife, Judy Lowe, of feeling unwell and said he was unable to take her to hospital for a scheduled operation. They both put it down to anxiety. On the 14th of March, Judy underwent surgery to increase the couple's chances of having another child. Whilst she remained in hospital recovering, Richard continued to work, commuting between London and Southend-on-Sea. On the evening of Saturday, the 17th of March, he attended a farewell party for the two Ronnies, who were about to leave for Australia. He returned home to Sunningdale, Berkshire, and went to bed. The next morning, the 18th of March, Richard did not arrive at the rehearsal for the 6th episode of Bloomers. A member of the production team rang his house. The phone was answered by a family friend, Rosanna Bradley, who had been staying at the house to help care for Richard's daughter, Kate. She said Richard was still sleeping and went to wake him. When she returned, she said she was unable to wake him and was advised to call a doctor. Shortly after, it was confirmed that Richard had passed away during the night. He was 31 years old. A post-mortem examination revealed a massive heart attack caused by undiagnosed coronary artery disease, a congenital heart defect that had gone undetected his entire life. The news shocked the entertainment industry and the public. On the 19th of April, 1979, 1 month after his death, more than 300 people attended a memorial service at St. Paul's Church in Covent Garden. Leonard Rossiter, Fulton Mackay, Richard Briers, and Porridge writers Dick Clement and Ian Lafreniere gave tributes. Lafreniere said, "I was always amazed by Richard's talent. I'm convinced he would have become an international actor." Richard Beckinsale was cremated, and his ashes were taken to Mortlake Crematorium. He left behind 2 daughters, Samantha and Kate, both of whom would go on to become actresses. Kate, in particular, achieved considerable success in Hollywood, carrying her father's legacy forward. Richard's sitcoms remain beloved, his performances timeless. He was a man who gave joy to millions, a talent taken far too soon. Before, she was the golden-haired comedienne whose drunken trumpet solo in Genevieve made audiences roar with laughter. Kay Kendall was a girl from a family of performers. Born into the world of music halls and vaudeville, she came into life on the 21st of May, 1927, in Withensea, a coastal resort in the East Riding of Yorkshire. Her father, Terence McCarthy, was the son of the music hall star Marie Kendall, and young Kay inherited the family gift for performance. Yet beneath the glamour and the laughter lay a secret, a diagnosis she was never told, a ticking clock that would stop when she was just 32 years old. Kay's mother, Gladys Drury, nurtured her daughter's love of the stage. The family moved frequently, and Kay attended various schools, including St. Leonard's in Brighton, St. Margaret's near Oban in Scotland, and the Lydia Kiash Dancing Academy in London. She trained in dance and performance, dreaming of a career on the stage. Her first major screen role came in 1946 in the musical London Town, one of the most expensive flops in British film history. The failure could have ended her career before it began, but Kay persevered. For several years, she worked steadily in minor roles, building her reputation and honing her craft. Then, in 1953, came Genevieve, a comedy about 2 couples competing in an antique car rally. Kay played the vivacious Rosalind, and in one unforgettable scene, she performed a drunken trumpet solo that brought the house down. The film was a smash hit, chosen as Best British Film of 1953. Kay Kendall was suddenly a star. Critics praised her for her beauty, her timing, and her willingness to throw herself into physical comedy without concern for dignity. She was, as one writer put it, a natural screwball heroine. Kay's career blossomed. She appeared in Doctor in the House in 1954, another hit that solidified her status as one of Britain's most popular actresses. In 1955, she starred opposite Rex Harrison in The Constant Husband. It was during the filming of this comedy that Kay and Rex began an affair. Rex was married to actress Lily Palmer at the time, but he fell deeply in love with Kay. What followed was one of the most poignant love stories in British cinema. Shortly after they met, Rex learned from Kay's doctor that she had been diagnosed with myeloid leukemia, a form of blood cancer. She had perhaps 2 years to live. The doctor had not told Kay the truth, instead informing her that she was suffering from an iron deficiency. Rex made a decision that astonished those who knew him. He divorced Lily Palmer and married Kay in June 1957, determined to care for her and give her the happiest years possible. Kay never knew she was dying. She believed she was simply anemic and that rest and treatment would make her well. In 1957, Kay won a Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy for her performance in Les Girls, a musical starring Gene Kelly, Mitzi Gaynor, and Tina Elg. She was radiant, charming, and full of life. Director Stanley Donen, who worked with her on Les Girls and later on Once More, with Feeling, said, "She was completely unpredictable. She was an instinctive comedienne with a real clown sense. No one has had it since Carole Lombard, and Kay was a better actress." In 1958, Kay starred alongside Rex in The Reluctant Debutante, a society comedy that showcased their chemistry. She cut back on her film work to accompany Rex on his tours of My Fair Lady and Belle, Book and Candle, traveling with him and enjoying their time together. Rex directed her in a play, The Bright One, in 1958, and though the production was not a major success, it was a labor of love. Kay's health began to decline visibly. She grew weaker, paler, more fragile. Still, she did not know the truth. Her final film, Once More, with Feeling, was completed in 1959. She starred opposite Yul Brynner in a comedy about a temperamental conductor and his long-suffering wife. It was released posthumously. By the summer of 1959, Kay was making plans to shoot a television show, still believing she had a future ahead of her. On the 6th of September, 1959, whilst at the London clinic, Kay Kendall passed away. She was 32 years old. Rex Harrison was at her side. He had kept his promise to care for her until the end. Kay was buried in the churchyard of St. John at Hampstead Church in London. Part of the inscription on her gravestone reads, "Kate, deeply loved wife of Rex." In September 2013, her final resting place was restored by the Music Hall Guild of Great Britain and America, ensuring that her memory would be preserved. Kay Kendall's films remain a testament to her talent. She was beautiful, funny, and utterly fearless in her comedy. She could make audiences laugh until they cried, and she did so with a grace that has never been equaled. Her life was far too short, but the joy she brought to the screen endures. Before she was the poised, elegant star of Gainsborough Studios, Anne Crawford was a girl from Palestine with a Scottish father and an English mother, born into a world on the brink of change. She came into life on the 22nd of November, 1920, in Haifa, where her father, Robert Lee, worked as the paymaster for Palestine Railways. The family later relocated to Scotland, where Anne grew up surrounded by the rugged beauty of Edinburgh. She trained at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art and began a career that promised greatness. Yet, at the height of her success, illness struck with devastating speed. On the 17th of October, 1956, Anne Crawford passed away, aged 35, her potential forever unrealized. Anne's birth name was Imelda Anne Crawford, though she adopted the simpler Anne for professional purposes. After attending the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art on the advice of actor Alastair Sim, she worked in repertory theatre in Manchester and York, building her skills and learning her craft. Her expressive face, strong yet softened by blonde waves, and her low, rich voice made her ideal for film acting. On screen, she exuded a laconic, no-nonsense air that belied an intensely professional approach. Colleagues remarked on her kindness and lack of affectation. One fellow actor described her as the first, and very nearly the only, female star I have ever met who was completely natural and without affectation or false bonhomie. Anne's first film contract was with Warner's First National, who cast her in rewarding roles in low-budget features. Her breakthrough came in 1943 with Millions Like Us, a wartime drama that crystallized her star persona. She played a character that was posh, somewhat selfish, but fundamentally decent. It was a type that suited her perfectly, and British cinema had no shortage of such roles. In 1945, she appeared in They Were Sisters, a Gainsborough Studios melodrama that showcased her nuanced acting. Whilst Margaret Lockwood was cultivated as the bad girl, and Phyllis Calvert as the wholesome counterpart, Anne was cast as more complex characters, women who were feminine but could hold their own. Anne's career flourished throughout the 1940s. She appeared in Bedelia in 1946, playing a woman battling a serial killer, and in Daughter of Darkness, another film that required both strength and vulnerability. She also appeared in Caravan, The Blind Goddess, and Thunder on the Hill, steadily building her reputation. In 1953, she played Morgan Le Fay opposite Mel Ferrer in Knights of the Round Table, a lavish Technicolor production that brought her international recognition. Her portrayal of the sorceress was striking, blending elegance with menace. Anne made her West End stage debut in 1949 in Western Wind at the Piccadilly Theatre. She also appeared on Broadway in January 1951 in The Green Bay Tree, though the production was not a success. Television became an increasingly important part of her career, and she was a regular presence on the small screen. In 1953, she married stage and television producer Wallace Douglas, her first and only marriage. That same year, she won a newspaper award as the most outstanding actress on British television. In December 1955, she topped a viewers' poll for her performance in the British Broadcasting Corporation teleplay The Leader of the House. Anne Crawford was at the peak of her powers, admired by audiences and respected by her peers. In 1956, Anne was appearing in Agatha Christie's The Spider's Web at the Savoy Theatre in London. She had taken over the role of Clarissa Hailsham-Brown from Margaret Lockwood, a challenging task given that the part had been written specifically for Lockwood. Anne rose to the occasion, delivering a performance that won praise from critics. But during the run, she began to feel unwell. She experienced fatigue and pain but carried on performing, determined not to let the production down. Her husband, Wallace Douglas, urged her to rest, but Anne refused. She was a professional, and the show must go on. In early September 1956, Anne left the cast of The Spider's Web. She was diagnosed with leukemia, a devastating blow. The disease progressed rapidly. Within about a month of the diagnosis, Anne Crawford passed away on the 17th of October, 1956, in a London nursing home. She was 35 years old. Her death shocked the entertainment industry. The newspapers emphasized how many projects she left unfinished: her contract with the British Broadcasting Corporation, a series of television adverts for beauty products, and even a campaign for Scottish Home Rule. Anne had been full of plans, full of energy, full of life. Suddenly, she was gone. Her burial on the 20th of October was attended by fellow colleagues, including Margaret Lockwood, Patrick Barr, and Ronald Howard. She was laid to rest at St. Mary's Roman Catholic Cemetery. After acting in a stage production of The Gift, about a scientist blinded by an accident, Anne had added a codicil to her will, leaving her eyes to medical research, a final act of generosity from a woman who had given so much. Anne Crawford's films remain a testament to her talent. She was elegant, intelligent, and utterly professional. Though modern audiences may find her perceived poshness somewhat distancing, there is no denying her skill and presence. Had she lived, she would have continued to grace screens for decades. Instead, we are left with what might have been. Before he was the voice that commanded Shakespeare's verse like thunder, before he was the highest paid actor in the world, Richard Burton was Richard Jenkins, the 12th child of a Welsh coal miner, born on the 10th of November, 1925, in Pont Rydwy Fen, Glamorganshire. His mother, Edith, died when he was barely 2 years old, leaving him to be raised by his eldest sister, Cecilia, in the neighbouring village of Tyebach. The family was Welsh-speaking, and Richard retained his facility in the language all his life. He was a boy of extraordinary intelligence and talent, yet he was also a man who would battle his demons until they finally claimed him on a quiet summer day in Switzerland. Richard's father was a miner who was fond of drink, and the household was often turbulent. Yet young Richard found inspiration in an unlikely place. At Port Talbot Grammar School, he came to the attention of schoolmaster Philip Burton, an inspirational teacher of English, who had the ability to pass on his passion for drama to his pupils. Philip Burton became Richard's guardian in 1943, and the youngster took on his surname. This decision eased Richard's entry to Oxford, where he studied for 6 months in 1944 before beginning his compulsory military service. But by this time, Richard had already enjoyed success on the professional stage, having been spotted by playwright Emlyn Williams and cast in a role in his drama The Druid's Rest. After over 2 years' service in the Royal Air Force, Richard became a professional actor. He took on a number of roles on the London stage and in British Broadcasting Corporation programmes, and then had his first opportunity on the silver screen in a role especially written for him in Emlyn Williams's film, The Last Days of Dolwyn. Whilst filming, he met the young Welsh actress Sybil Williams, whom he married in 1949. Richard's career took off after he excelled in Shakespearean plays on the Stratford stage over the summer of 1951, particularly when he took the roles of Prince Hal and King Henry V. Critics hailed him as one of the finest classical actors of his generation. Hollywood beckoned, and Richard answered. He appeared in The Robe, Cleopatra, Beckett, and The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, each performance demonstrating his remarkable range. In 1966, he was nominated for an Academy Award for his portrayal of King Henry VIII in A Man for All Seasons. He would go on to receive 7 Oscar nominations in total, though he never won. His voice, rich and resonant, became his trademark. He could make even the simplest lines sound profound. In 1963, whilst filming Cleopatra, Richard began an affair with his co-star, Elizabeth Taylor. The relationship became a global scandal, dominating headlines and making both actors the most photographed couple in the world. They married in 1964, divorced in 1974, remarried in 1975, and divorced again in 1976. Their love was passionate, tumultuous, and destructive. Together, they appeared in 11 films, including Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and The Taming of the Shrew. Both were heavy drinkers, and their excesses fueled each other. Richard's alcoholism worsened during their years together. By the 1970s, Richard's career had become erratic. He appeared in some films of dubious quality simply to pay the bills and support his large family. He had 10 children from various relationships and marriages. His drinking was out of control. At the height of his boozing, he was consuming 3 to 4 bottles of hard liquor a day. He also smoked between 60 and 100 cigarettes daily. His health was deteriorating rapidly. In 1974, during the filming of The Klansman, he nearly drank himself to death and was admitted to a hospital in Santa Monica, California. He dried out temporarily, but soon relapsed. In 1977, Richard earned another Oscar nomination for his excellent performance as a concerned psychiatrist in Equus. He appeared in The Wild Geese in 1978, an adventure tale about mercenaries in Africa, and the film became a cult favorite. In 1983, Richard married Sally Hay, a freelance production assistant, in Las Vegas. It was his 5th and final marriage. His last film performance was as O'Brien in 1984, released in 1984. It was a powerful, haunting portrayal, and critics praised it highly. On the 5th of August, 1984, Richard was at his home in Céligny, Switzerland. He had been in poor health for years, suffering from cirrhosis of the liver and the effects of decades of abuse. That morning, he suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage. He was taken to a hospital in Geneva but passed away shortly after arrival. He was 58 years old. His body was cremated, though he was later buried at the old cemetery in Céligny. Elizabeth Taylor, though no longer married to him, was devastated by his death. So too were his fellow actors, his children, and the millions who had admired his work. Richard Burton's legacy is complex. He was a man of extraordinary talent who never quite fulfilled his potential. He made choices that damaged his health and career, yet he also created performances that will live forever. When they write his obituary, as one interviewer once noted, they will say he was an author who wrote one book that will last and a remarkable actor. Richard Burton was both a triumph and a tragedy, a giant who walked among us and whose voice still echoes through the ages. Before she was the siren of Italian cinema, before her name became synonymous with scandal and beauty, Belinda Lee was a young girl from Devon with dreams of the stage. Born on the 15th of June, 1935, at Budleigh Salterton Cottage Hospital, she was the daughter of Robert Esmond Lee, the manager of the Rose Mullion Hotel, and Stella Mary Graham, a florist. Her childhood was spent at Cliff Cottage on Cliff Road, a modest home overlooking the sea. Young Billy, as she was known to friends, attended St. Margaret's School in Exeter from the age of 9, where she spent her days reading plays and imagining a future on stage. A friend later recalled, Billy, even then, said she would be an actress. By the time she was 25, that dream had come true, and she had become one of the most photographed British actresses of her day. But on the 12th of March, 1961, whilst traveling through the California desert, her life ended suddenly in a tragic accident. Belinda's parents separated when she was young, and she moved with her mother to London after attending various schools. After a period at a drama school, she won a scholarship to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, one of Britain's most prestigious institutions. She made her stage debut in 1953 as a student in Nottingham and appeared in her first film, The Runaway Bus, the following year when she signed a contract with the Rank Organisation. The film, a comedy starring Frankie Howerd, was a modest success, and Belinda's beauty and poise caught the attention of studio executives. She was groomed as a starlet, cast in films like The Bells of St. Trinian's in 1954 and Footsteps in the Fog in 1955, alongside Stuart Granger and Gene Simmons. In June 1954, Belinda married Cornell Lucas, a Rank Studios photographer who was much older than she. He helped promote her widely, taking thousands of glamorous photographs that appeared in magazines and newspapers across Britain. Belinda was cast as one of several sexy blondes, often compared unfavorably to the popular Diana Dors. Yet Belinda was more than just a pretty face. She had genuine acting ability, and in 1956, she demonstrated it by playing Rosalind in a production of As You Like It at an open-air theatre in Regent's Park. Reviews were mixed, but some critics praised her vitality and charm. The Spectator noted that she combines eloquence of voice and gesture with a pleasantly unleading, ladylike approach. By the late 1950s, Belinda's career in Britain had stalled. She was typecast, limited by her image, and frustrated by the roles she was offered. In 1957, she travelled to Italy to appear in her first continental film, Goddess of Love. It was there that she met Prince Filippo Orsini, an Italian aristocrat, war hero, and the Pope's throne assistant. Both were married, but they began a passionate romance that captivated the European press. The scandal made Belinda into a major European celebrity, though it also made her a target for criticism. The British press, in particular, vilified her, portraying her as a symbol of permissiveness and controversy. In 1958, Belinda was sent by Rank to South Africa to film Nor the Moon by Night, starring alongside Patrick McGoohan. Halfway through production, she abruptly left to be with Orsini in Rome. She tried to persuade him to leave his family and return to Africa with her, but he refused. Emotionally overwhelmed, Belinda experienced a severe personal crisis but received medical treatment and recovered. Days later, Orsini suffered his own breakdown and required urgent care. Their relationship continued, but it was clear that it was troubled and unsustainable. By 1960, the Orsini affair had ended, and Belinda had begun a relationship with Italian film director Gualtiero Jacopetti. She appeared in several Italian and French films, including The Knights of Lucretia, Borgia, and Les Dragueurs, earning critical acclaim for her dramatic abilities. Directors praised her willingness to take creative risks and her natural screen presence. The Monthly Film Bulletin described her as an actress in the Crawford and McCurry class. Her career was flourishing in Europe, even as Britain continued to distance itself from her. In early 1961, Belinda traveled to the United States with Jacopetti, who was working on a documentary called Women of the World. On the 12th of March, Belinda, Jacopetti, co-producer Paolo Cavara, and their driver, Alet Nino Falenza, along Highway 91. During the journey, the vehicle lost control at high speed, left the road, and overturned. Belinda sustained critical injuries and was found unresponsive at the scene. She passed away shortly afterwards at the age of 25. The three men survived with injuries from which they later recovered. Count Orsini traveled to attend her funeral and later attempted to obtain her ashes for burial, but as he was not a relative, the request was initially refused. 8 months later, he succeeded. Belinda's urn was interred in the Cimitero degli Inglesi, the non-Catholic cemetery in Rome, the resting place of poets Keats and Shelley. It had been her wish to be buried there. A film star archive later remarked, "The greatest mystery about Belinda Lee is why today there is no interest in her, whilst there are cults about other, less attractive, less talented actresses. It is a fair question. Belinda Lee was beautiful, talented, and fearless. She refused to conform to the expectations placed upon her and paid the price. Her life was a blaze of passion and ambition, cut short on a desert highway. She left behind a body of work that deserves to be rediscovered and celebrated." Thank you for watching, and please consider subscribing to Cinema Peak for more remarkable true stories.